Colon cancer in people under 50 has roughly doubled since the 1990s. And while researchers have a long list of suspects, ultra-processed food, microplastics, antibiotic overuse, the standard American everything, nobody's been able to point at one and say, that's the smoking gun. Especially when we factor in the weird geography connection with the disease. That is, until last week. 2 new studies just dropped and a major suspect just got named. One identified a specific herbicide associated with early onset colon cancer, and the other found that pesticide cocktails, or the unintended mixture of these chemicals in things like waterways, may be raising cancer risk by up to 150%. And I know, every week there's a new thing trying to kill us. Seed oils, microplastics, standing too close to the microwave. But the risk mitigation here is actually simpler than you think. So we're gonna unpack both, separate the signal from the panic, and end with the 5 lowest effort things you can do right now to drop your exposure risk today. Let's go. Yo. What is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run liftandbalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and longevity and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic way. Today, we find ourselves in one of those rare science stories where the answer is genuinely actionable. So let's hop right in. Like I mentioned, we have 2 new studies, both published in the Nature family of journals, and both basically saying the same thing. So let's start with the one that comes with the most unique smell. An international research team wanted to know why young people are getting a disease usually reserved for the 70-plus crowd. One of the most common and most treatable, if caught early, cancers, colorectal. And to do this, they compared the tumor tissue of 31 people with early onset colorectal cancer to 100 people with the more typical late onset version of the disease using something called methylation risk scores, which cleverly calculated changes in the subject's DNA expression over time, or epigenome. Kinda like chemical Venmo history for your DNA. You may not remember it, but you certainly spent it, correlating it with 29 different lifestyle and environmental factors. Now, I need to stop and call out what you're probably thinking. 130 people? That's tiny. What is this, a study for ants? How are we going to get any signal from that? To which I'll enlighten you that this research team was no slouch. Knowing their sample size was small, they took their findings and tested whether the same signal held up in 9 independent datasets. And it did. But they didn't stop there. They then validated it at the population level across 94 US counties using 21 years of pesticide use and cancer incident data, to which one chemical continuously lit up the risk meter like it was a billboard in Times Square. A highly water-soluble herbicide that has been in use since the 1960s, picloram. Commonly sprayed on rangeland, pastures, wheat fields, and roadsides, it effortlessly leaches straight into groundwater, survives livestock digestion almost completely intact, and even ends up in manure that gets used as fertilizer. Yeah. And this picloram signal wasn't a fluke. It was statistically significant in the discovery cohort, replicated in the meta-analysis, and confirmed at the population level, even after adjusting for socioeconomic factors and other pesticides. Now, here's an important fact. This link is via DNA methylation patterns, not picloram in the actual tumor tissue, which means this is only an interesting association until more research is done. But you know our philosophy. When the cost of protective behavior is near zero, and the potential upside is maybe don't get colon cancer at 38, that's what we call a low regret, high reward move. Meaning, you shouldn't need 100% certainty to start filtering your water today. But before we get into the low effort tips, we gotta talk about study number 2. Because if study 1 named the suspect, study 2 tells you where the crime was committed, making it more important than a single contaminant alone. Published in Nature Health, this one comes out of Peru, where researchers mapped pesticide exposure across the country at 100-meter resolution, layered it on to over 158,000 cancer cases from the National Registry between 2007 and 2020, and asked Do the hotspots line up? They even validated their computer models with actual human hair samples from 50 individuals, confirming the model's predictions matched real biological contamination. And what they found was moderate to high pesticide risk zones covered over a third of Peru's national territory, with off-site contamination extending 20 to 30 miles beyond cultivated land. Meaning, if you live within 30 miles of a sprayed field, you are in the pesticide splash zone, with liver cancer showing the most activity right on top of the pesticide hotspots. Damn is right. But here's the part that should make you put your fork down and re-strategize. They modeled 31 active ingredients, none of which are classified as definite human carcinogens by the IARC, although all have either a uncertain, probable, or possible carcinogen rating. And here's why that matters. They found that these chemicals only had this strong cancer connection when they're combined, which is the exact gray zone our regulatory testing misses. Because the EPA doesn't test for mixtures effects when pesticides don't share a common mechanism of toxicity. And in that gray zone, the researchers found that living in a pesticide-heavy environment raised cancer risk by up to 150%, even when each individual chemical on the list was considered safe on its own, shedding light on a harsh truth. Even though the parts pass the inspection, the whole can very well be a poison, with researchers finding its main mode of action being a pathway called non-genotoxic carcinogenesis, which, unlike how we normally think of carcinogens as things that break and mutate our DNA, this instead disrupts cell identity programs, basically how the DNA is being read and translated, essentially gaslighting your cells until they forget who they are, and as a byproduct, setting them up for cellular dysfunction. Essentially, picloram and its friends walk up to the biological club. The bouncer shines a flashlight on its ID for a half a second. Are you a group 1 carcinogen? No? Alright, looks good, McLovin. Go on in. And does the same thing with 30 of its buddies. Then, a few years later, at the cellular equivalent of 2 a.m., you all of a sudden have a all-out biological brawl on your cellular dance floor. Thus why the best present-day strategy, as we've been preaching each and every week for years now, is owning your health. Because that, my friends, puts you in the very best position to own your outcome. So, with that, let's get tactical. Here are 5 high-impact, low-regret moves that have a cost near zero and undeniable upside to mitigate your risk. Starting with filtering your damn water. Yesterday, which we've been talking about for quite some time now, and for good reason, as this may be your biggest impact move, simply because you drink water every single day. And herbicides, along with all sorts of contaminants, are notorious for making their way into our water systems, sneaking past the minimal treatment standards at most water municipalities and setting the stage for a constant exposure. So, get a reverse osmosis system or a high-quality carbon block filter rated for contaminants such as herbicides, pesticides, heavy metals, forever chemicals, and microplastics, of which we talk much more about the best options in this breakdown here. Because, not to be the bearer of bad news, but your Brita zero water and refrigerator filters are not doing the trick, as they're often basic carbon, doing an okay job on chlorine and taste, but not rated for any of the biggest risks. So if you're going to invest in one piece of health equipment this year, make it a water filter. Next, know your Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. These are the most and least commonly sprayed and contaminated fruits and veggies. Yeah, opting for local and organic where you know your farmer is always the most ideal, but often not swingable for everyone. So focusing instead on organic options for this Dirty Dozen is a good compromise. This list is updated every year and currently includes strawberries, spinach, kale, grapes, peaches, apples, bell peppers, cherries, blueberries, and green beans. While the Clean 15 is produce with minimal residue regardless of how it's grown. These include avocados, sweet corn, pineapples, onions, papaya, frozen sweet peas, and asparagus. So eat up strategically. Third, we have baking soda baths. And no, Not for you. This one is essentially free and takes 15 minutes. And here's what you get. The Connecticut Agriculture Experiment Station found that a baking soda soak, or 1 teaspoon per 2 cups of water for 12 to 15 minutes, outperforms both plain water and vinegar for removing surface pesticide residue from produce. This is because the alkalinity of the baking soda degrades the pesticide molecules on the surface. So don't forget to rinse afterwards as well. However, this does not account for the chemicals that get absorbed up into the plant's vascular system. So it helps, but it's not perfect. Fourth, we have eating for your detox pathways. That's right, forget the IV drips and detox teas. Your liver has biological machinery called glucuronidation and sulfation, and it loves cruciferous vegetables. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, cabbage. These give your liver the raw materials to package up toxins and kick them out of club circulation. Plus fiber, which can physically bind to toxins in your gut and help excrete them. And here's the part that nobody talks about. None of this works if you're constipated. Bound toxins that don't make their way out of the colon get reabsorbed. So fiber, hydration, and regular bowel movements are the boring foundation underneath the detox conversation. Thus, your best strategy is to put your already fully equipped body in a position to do its thing. Lastly, we have sweating it out on the reg. Nothing new here. Exercise and heat exposure are good for biological business. Sauna and exercise both increase the excretion of lipophilic fat-soluble compounds, and pesticides love to hide in fat. So sweating is one of the body's toxin exit ramps. Thus, a few sauna sessions a week plus your normal training will have you adding meaningful toxin mitigation to your life, on top of all the other benefits we've talked about on this channel for years. So do it. And a final bonus tip, avoid living close to heavy farming operations if you can. If you're house hunting and there's an actively sprayed agriculture field next door, that should be a real consideration. Drift extends for miles in some cases. So keep that in mind. That being said, I would love to hear what tips you have up your longevity sleeve on the topic, so drop them in the comments below. And remember, although the science still has a long way to go, you don't have to sit down and wait. You know what they say, own your health today, or deal with the brawl on your biological dance floor tomorrow. The choice is yours. And don't stand in front of the microwave, just in case.